It's the morning after. I am back. Yesterday did sod all in terms of the trails doing nothing. Cameras pointed to the sky. Once again, very faint trails with a mixture of cumulus. So remember, like I said, not every single trail we see in the sky is weather modification. Look at the rose. Look at that. Where are the roses on that? That's stunning. Okay, we've just gone past 10:30 in the morning, and once again we have the very faint trails. Now look at these trails. Yes, they're getting bigger, but they're very see-through. Now, to block the sun out in my area, bear in mind it's only a very small portion of the sky we're witnessing. It's not really going to block out that thing there, isn't it? Okay, so like I said, I'm not denying chemtrails. I've got to keep saying it because people think I'm a debunker. It's like, look, we need to analyse really what we're seeing in the sky, because I'm talked to death about it, and I don't want to bang on that. People just don't really know what they're really seeing or observing because they don't understand how clouds, or which clouds, or how clouds work and how they form. And obviously there's different atmospheric layers you can see. But yeah, once again, we have the trails with the cumulus. Well, nimbocumulus, as one would say. In certain areas, which is this big sort of mass rising up, which is a sign of changeable weather. It's supposed to rain over the weekend. Hopefully not, because we're going to go crop circling. But yeah, I just want to show you, in that area there is still quite hazy, a little bit hazy. Now, like I said, it can be a natural phenomenon. You can trace it back through many books, through many decades, and it is part of it's almost like a stratus, which is this thin veil. You get stratus on the ground, which we consider as fog or mist, and you get that very high up, above 20,000 feet. And this is where these trails are persisting, which is pretty much cruising altitude for aircraft. But as you see, look, you've got a trail there. See, it's not going to dim the sun, is it? You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Brothers and sisters. Oh look, we have some more cumulus coming in. Right, pop back in an hour and see what these trails do. Early lunchtime, 12 o'clock. And this is it so far. The sun is still shining. I still have my sunglasses on. I can still see the sunlight on the tiles of the roof. There is one. I need to change my camera. This is ridiculous now. There is one trail, but they're like this, very faint. You do have the haze, for sure. That can be contributed to the trails, but the time lapse might say something different. And I think observing the time lapse camera and the footage throughout the day, you get to understand what clouds are doing. And I think that's very vital and important, just to learn the basics of meteorology, because weather can change, guys, and we all know that, okay? But I'm trying to put into practice what I've been researching on weather, okay? Yes, I have to go to the mainstream, and I have to go through my old books, and what my old books are saying, which are dated back around about 90 years, is the same science, same type of cloud. Well, different, we'll get to that anyway. But all in all, these trails are not really doing anything. It's not actually, come to think about it. Yeah, it's starting to get a bit traily over there. When I say traily, it's just these trails, okay? I'm not calling them chemtrails. I need to call them a different word for it, because I don't know what these are. But we can see the white haze is forming, and it seems to be quite prominent in that area there. I mean, this is very common video footage and photographs I see of people posting pictures online on various social media sites, especially this one here, Chemtrail Facebook page. And you will find people posting pictures like this, what you're seeing right now, trails, and then blaming it on geoengineering. But until we review the camera, we can properly examine what this white haze is doing and where it's come from. Has it come from something natural? Because it is a natural cloud, guys. But at the same time, these trails, or if you want to call it chemtrails, that's fine, spread out. And they clearly do that. And I've got loads of footage of that. You've all seen the footage. In fact, here's the footage of one trail spreading out. It's probably the best one I've caught, actually. Caught it this year. But there we go. I'm back. It's 12 o'clock. Pretty much lunchtime. Once again, we have a mixed bag on this one. Because one can observe the white haze. I can't see any cirrus at the moment. So I would gather that this is more like a stratus. Here's a photograph from back in the days what a stratus actually is. So it should be just a little bit lower than the trails itself. Now if I point the camera to the sky, pretty much like that trail there, you can see in the mix, you do have the trails in mixed with the white haze, okay? And I'm not saying that's white haze is to do with the trails until we observe the time-lapse camera. There we go. And there's a pretty good tell that if there's any stratus or cirrostratus in the sky. So if I point my camera up into the sun, you can see it's starting to make a very faint halo. The stratus might do that, but it's more of those cirrostratus which will create the ring around the sun. But you might get the odd bit at the end, like there. You would call that a sun dog. Ever heard of that? It's just like a very short rainbow you see in the sky. Obviously people blame it on geoengineering, but this is probably just to do with ice crystals. It's a bit like the same effect when you're actually watering the garden and then suddenly the water hits the sun in the right direction and it creates like this rainbow effect. And it's basically that in the sky. It's just super cool ice crystal clouds. Just you're seeing it from a perspective on an angle where you can actually see it. Here we have it's. I would say that bubbliness there is this, which is more a altocumulus. So altocumulus is a lot lower. Or even like cirrocumulus actually. Cirrocumulus is a bit more higher than altocumulus. However, the time lapse will pick up pretty much the whole aspect of this. And one thing to bear in mind, like I always do, I'm only seeing one portion of the sky. Very, very tiny portion. But the sun is still shining. The sun is still shining. I'm back. We are 1:30, hour and a half later. And at the moment, I would say there's a lot of cirrostratus in here. You see the stretch marks, as one would say, in the clouds. Also, you're talking about this white haze here. Hopefully the camera can pick it up. But you can see it can create this white mist, and I think it's extremely important for people to realise that it is a natural cloud and is part of the stratus. Now strat means part of the stratosphere, and then above that you've got something called cirrus or cirrostratus or cirrocumulus. All depends on the level of altitude. So I'm going to put some photographs here to show you what this looks like. And remember, these photographs, I'm going to put the date on there so you can see the publications, so you can see the exact date of the publication's release. Sure, you've got a few trails in here, but like I mentioned in my last video, that moisture plays a massive part of clouds and how clouds are formed. Cloud nuclei, as one would say. So here's just a view so far. So yes, it has got a lot more hazier, but I think that's completely natural, and I mentioned that in my last video uploaded, and a very clear example of that was through the time lapse. In fact, I'm going to put the time lapse on now so you can see where this white haze come from, and then you can tell whether or not it's actually come from chemtrails or something natural. Actually, we're talking about cirrus here, cirrostratus, because I'm going to take a photograph right now of the halo around the sun. So here's a picture of cirrostratus throughout the decades, and also we have the normal stratus, which, like I mentioned, is a bit like mist or haze down a certain altitude, which will be a bit lower than your typical cirrostratus. Understood? I mean, yeah, you do have mix of cirrus in there, which makes sense for the halo around the sun, because you can see the little whispers there. You can tell by the whispers right here, which are all called typical cirrus. In fact, you can see it in the distance there. These are like this whisper effects, which is obviously the same altitude as where the trail is, around about 20,000 and 35,000 feet. So yeah, I find clouds immensely fascinating. I really do. Bloody nerd. An hour later, the trails are a hit and miss, really. There's one there, and mostly back to the normal white haze. But this time it's more or less separated. You see there's like one bit there is all contextualized, which I'm going to put a picture up on the screen now so you can see. But yeah, there's small little trails, not really doing anything. Like I said, not blocking the sun. I've got my bloody sunglasses on, you know. Does it dim the temperature though? No, not really. Still feel the heat, still lovely. Well, as long as my plants are still growing. But all in all, it's not a bad day. You know, unless you're a massive hardcore chemtrail believer, then you mostly stay indoors, which is quite sad, really. Okay, it's coming up to 4 o'clock. About an hour and a half later. And what do we have here? The haze. I know the sun's blocking it. It is there, but in some areas it's actually quite blue sky. Come on, there we go. Oh yeah, check this out. Look at this. I'm not too sure the time lapse is actually going to capture this, but you can see here what happens with these trails. If it's been sprayed or laid or natural, it hits the wind shear. Okay, the wind shear is at the base level of the jet stream. All right, so obviously the planes fly above 20,000 feet because that is cruising altitude. You get less turbulence. Okay, and obviously it's a lot colder on that altitude, or above 20,000 feet. You're talking about like -40. It goes to -60. And what happens, obviously, if you're going by mainstream media, you know the condensation trail actually forms a trail in the sky. And then if it's been sprayed on purpose, that's up to you. And then what happens, the trail will actually descend or hits the wind shear, and that is what's creating that effect right there. You can see that wispy effect, and that's basically what a cirrus does. And a cirrus, it's basically that. There, coming up, you can see it there. There's some of it over there, actually. It's like this whisper effect. These whispers, you can see. So yeah, there we go. Interesting one. I was going to look at the time-lapse camera actually on this one. Hour has gone by, and we do have, I don't know what that could be, to be honest with you. Could be a trowel. That'd be a fat trowel if it was. Don't think it is, to be honest. That's an interesting one. Come to think about it, got one big fat trowel there. It could be this, the cirrus that can stretch out far and wide, but that looks quite interesting actually. I wonder if, actually, thinking about it, look, you got that there, which is a trowel, and you got all that. Is that a trowel or two blended in together? I'm not sure. Interesting. Okay. Well, let's just swing the camera around and have a look around my area at the moment. Looks okay for the time being. Clear blue skies. Very, very faint haze. But it's just this big mass here that's going right across the sun. But again, I'm squinting and I can still see the sun. It's not really dimming it completely. Interesting. There we go. Possibly a fat trowel. Now this is interesting. We're literally coming up to 6 o'clock. I don't know if it's visible in the camera. We can see like a sundog. It's a bit traily at the moment. Look, I'm going to turn the camera around. I keep on saying white haze. Yes, I know that. A quality trowel, I should say. And in the midst we've got some, I would say that there, look, that, then we can focus on it. Kind of is a trowel, obviously, but it's turning into like the cirrus, like I said earlier on in the video, that the trowels are basically hitting the wind shear, and you can, such a clear sign of that. Look at that cirrus. So that's a cirrus. Remember I was talking about the cirrus is the same altitude as these trowels over here, and there's a lot of them actually clutter in the sky. But now ask this question: why are they doing it now in the evening? Is this going to last throughout the evening? I mean, it's pointless, isn't it? The temperature's going down by now as we come up to 6 o'clock. Is it to do with moisture like I was talking about? You've got a bit of a sundog there. Right, just about where that dot is. Not UFO, don't worry. Can you see that? Yeah, it's called a sundog. So that is pretty much part of what's called cirrostratus. Look at that. I'm gonna capture you, mate. Where are you two? Oh no, the bloody camcorder's all sticky and needs sorting out. Okay. Oh, look at that, it's made a gap. One would say, well, they've obviously turned the spray on and off. Not too sure on that one, personally. But what's interesting, there is like a white haze. The amount of times I said in this video, but look, you see all that there? So my indication that trail being formed is above this fine mist, and that I would consider as stratus and not cirrostratus. Okay, now so altostratus is just lower than the cirrostratus. That can cause like this like sundog effect. Oh look, that trail disappeared. That's interesting. It was like it was giving off quite a strong trail. I mean, for instance, we would consider that as a contrail, really, when you look at it, because it's not giving off a trail. But if I zoom in,
And if I zoom in and just take this into consideration, what's the difference between that and a chemtrail being sprayed? Well, they say, well, it's in a jet fuel. Then how do you actually switch on and off the spraying when the fuel is contaminated? Do you know what I mean? The chemtrail chemicals should be coming out of that plane engine as soon as it turns on, even if it's on ground level, taken off. Do you know what I mean? You know, how do you control that? And the switches I've seen is just pilots taking the piss, and unfortunately people are falling for it. So a lot of these so-called chemtrails or persistent trails being laid, it really is to do with, should be another one over there. Is there another one? Full one over there? It's coming out of the engine. Remember, I used this book as a reference point about the fact that, oh, that's perfect Cirrus. That's a Cirrus. Here's some photographs of some Cirrus back in the yards. But these trails, like I mentioned, here's a book from the 1980s talking about stable and unstable weather and what it affects trails. And here is another video that I did. I can't remember what it was called, but it shows these like massive thick trails that persisted. And this was in the evening. I remember this when I filmed that specific video, and it was to do, it wasn't at the evening time, I remember that. Okay, here's this plane that gave off that trail first of all, then didn't. Fantastic. So, in regard, oh look, hold on, look, perfect example. Like I keep saying, it's not a black chemtrail. And this actually happened on the other video that I did, because the sun is directly behind me and it's shining where the plane is actually flying behind, and it is actually given off basically a shadow. Alright, not black chemtrail. But what can we learn from this evening? Has this happened before? Yes, it has. I've got documented proof of this. It's in one of my videos that this so-called spraying in the evening, you are literally bang on 6 o'clock in the evening. Makes no sense why they would be spraying now. It could last throughout the night and then spread out during the evening, but this is assumption because I don't see those trails 9 hours time, do you know what I mean, until in the morning, so it's hard to say really. I mean, you could check the satellite really, but the satellites are not that great quality once you zoomed in. You can see the trails, but you need like a massive one to actually kind of see what they're actually doing. But yeah, we have once again the Cirrus with the trails. Let's just swing around here so you can see. Yeah. So like I said, it's been a mixed bag today. And I'll pop back in about half an hour, because I like to see what this beautiful white haze is going to do. And it is travelling up towards my direction. In fact, I would like to film a good quality trail, a persistent trail. So I think I do need to put food on though. Damn it, alright. A bit short time, I'll have a look. Okay, about 15 minutes had passed. Bit of short time. And obviously everything's more or less persistent to a certain degree. Some of the trails are getting quite thick. Well, that's not even anything, very, very faint. But you could say, as a little experiment, right, if we look where we got that trail is, and we got that mist, as it travels, what is the chance of it actually forming a trail round about where my finger is? Because there's moisture. But you could say, why didn't it basically form a trail in that area where those trails are? Well, I think it's actually a lot higher than that, which you would have thought at that cruising altitude. I'm just guessing here. Do you know what? Shall I just get my let's get the flight tracker out. Do a 360 turn. All of that. But if they were spraying, why don't you just do like a mass amount of it instead of just doing these small little bursts like that? Do you know what I mean? I'm just asking questions. Look, again, not denying chemtrails for the last bloody time, and I keep mentioning it. There we go. Right, I need to put food on. I'll catch you in a bit. Another 15 minutes have passed as we are 6:30. And so far the trails have eased, and the ones that have been laid or sprayed, whatever you want to call it, are starting to spread out like you're seeing. But is it going to dim that sun? Well, first of all, it's the flipping evening. Do you know what I mean? Makes no sense. So is there an alternative motive for the so-called spraying? Not saying that is spraying, but is there something else to this so-called spraying? Because it's not really dimming the sun. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Just ask the question. Apologies, just burped. Take a look at this trail. This singular trail is pretty big, isn't it? It's pretty big. Like I said, something that Bonnie Blue would ride. I should mention Lily Phillips once in a while. I prefer Lily Phillips to Bonnie Blue. If there's any Karens watching this video, get a life. So you can see the trail is quite big, but it's really faint. And I keep saying this to people that need to, like the Skywatchers, like myself, say, right, look at these trails and how big they're going to get. But is it enough to block the sun or dim the sun? And the answer to that, right now, I can see, if I just look up, is new. Oh, number one. But all in all, temperatures are going down because it is 6:30, but the sun is still shining. I've still got my sunglasses on. Look, example, I can just see this showing out right now. Another thing that I analyse, we have that white mist. See the white mist here? Okay, just in that immediate area here. You see the trail start to form in that area. Now you could say it could persist. It could do actually, come to think about it. Now this depends on the altitude. I'm going to go on Flight Tracker. That is travelling at 35,000 feet. I can see the plane there. I'm just going to click on it purely because I want to see a photograph of it. Okay, so it's an Irish flight, Dublin to wherever that is. Let's zoom in to the aircraft right now that I've just showed you and see if we can see any green bits. Yes, it is the plane. Look at that. Yes. Perfect. So the app is correct. Not all the time, but I've just proven that plane was that plane I just showed you just now on the Flight Tracker. So I keep on predicting things today, don't I? Seems to be coming right. We have the Sundog, typical example of Stratus. And obviously the Cirrus as well. Look at that. The stretchiness of this. Here's some photographs you can see. And it's now, if I point in, let's put a photograph here. So you can see that sort of white sheen, that white haze can be natural. And like I mentioned in my last episode, that the fact that this white haze can obviously be natural, and it's not enough for the trails to actually make this mass. Do you understand what I mean? So people at the moment would look up and go, oh my god, look at the spraying that's been done. But really, technically, when you look at it, you are dealing with that trail, and if I look around, you've got a bit there and a little bit there, but it's been very faint, nothing that's been substantial. But it's down to the person and what information they're coming across. And this is a very typical example. Here I'm just going to show you some examples of what people post, because they don't really know what they're actually seeing, what they're actually observing. Look, this could be trails spread out, but to be honest with you, look, if you just like hang about and just have a look at what cirrus looks like, and like I mentioned about the cirrus is the same altitude as the trails here, thereof, basically, it's above 20,000 feet. There you go, we've got another plane here going across. We have another little sundog down there. So yeah, an explanation for that. Let's put one up on screen right now. You can see from back in the day, it's just to do with ice crystal clouds. It's basically to do with ice crystals. Super cooled ice crystals. I'm going to be honest, have a look at this trail right here. It seems to be in the same altitude as that white mist. Let's go on the flight tracker. I'm going to track this plane right now. Okay, so this plane here is another Irish plane, I think. So once that, I don't know if you can see it. You can see it now, where it's not giving off a trail at all. It looked like it was. Here is the plane. It's got a blue tag at the back, and hopefully blue engines on this one. Oh, there we go. There we go. Let's have a look. I won't say the blue engines. Do you have blue engines? Ah, bloody tripod. Have a look. Okay, zoom in. Has it got the blue underneath? Yes. Does it have the blue engines? I'm not too sure. But that's it. That is definitely the plane. It's high enough to give off a trail, but it's not. It's coming out of the white haze over here. Interesting. So it's probably the white haze is a lot lower, like I said, as part of the stratus, and not the cirrus stratus, so to speak, if that makes sense. We are 8:45, about to go live on Alien Addict in 15 minutes, so I'll just do one more final conclusion on what really happened today. So if I remember rightly, it was a bit traily this morning, and then you had a mixed bag of this like white haze mixed in with a bit of cirrus, and had a bit of cumulus mixed in as well. So like I said, it's such a mixed bag, but then the trails started to appear near the evening, around about 6 o'clock, which kind of makes no sense really, but they're gone down in the distance, so I don't know what they've done. You know, this is it. This other thing is just all speculation really. But in terms of what did the trails do so far in the evening, nothing. It produced this, which is a lovely halo around the sun, or that sundog, so to speak. But once again, the trails for the past couple of days, as you see them in the morning, very, very faint, hasn't really done anything to dim the sun, let alone block it out. So it just goes to show, did the chemtrails, so to speak, block out the sun or dim the sun the past couple of days? And the answer to that is no. Before I end the show, let's turn the camera around one more time, just to show you what the sky is like. And it is scheduled to rain tomorrow, so you will get like a mass of, well, it would be cumulus really, and nimbocumulus. So there we go, that's it so far. So before I end this video, I think it's worth us going through the time-lapse video to see where this white haze come from, and also track what these trails actually do. So let's bring up the time-lapse. Okay, what you're seeing at the moment is the morning, okay? And this is just the bare minimal trails we saw first thing around about 9:30 to around about 10 o'clock, and this is what you're seeing here. And obviously these big puffy clouds are the cumulus. You see the trails in the background, as you can see, and you just got some cumulus coming in. Now you can see that cumulus. I can get that bird out of the way of the camera. You can actually see not the cumulus, you can see the cirrus starting to come into fruition now. Now obviously this puffy white cloud here is the
cumulus, and in the background you can see the cirrus. Take note that the trails are starting to form, and whilst you've got the cirrus at the same time being started to develop and start to get a bit bigger, and obviously this big puffy cloud you can see forming, that's obviously the cumulus. That's very relevant for the remainder of the day. You can see the trails here are starting to get a bit more persistent as it's coming up to 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock, and obviously this white haze we're seeing at the moment starts to get more prominent throughout the rest of the day. Now the trails are starting to get more dominant now, with this white haze starting to come to fruition. Now if we just go back a little bit, I just want to show you is where this white haze come from. Can we see if it is actually to do with these trails being spread out, or is it something to do with cirrus? Now my own personal opinion on this, through the photographs I've been presenting to you, that this most likely is a bit of a blend of two. Because remember I said that the trails are at the same altitude as the cirrus. Thereof, really. And you can see that it's pretty much like a mixed bag. Now, if you go through the cirrus cloud pictures and even the cirro autocumulus pictures, you can see that it's more or less the same sort of thing what we're seeing back then to what we are seeing now. Okay, so I'm really just trying to analyze what the chemtrail community will say, that, oh no, this has all been sprayed on purpose. I could basically disprove that and say, look, no, this white haze is something natural. It is a natural cloud, and I'm just here presenting it to you. Now, obviously there are days when it's extremely traily, and that will contribute to the white haze. Absolutely, I'm not denying that at all. But what we consider this white haze as cirrostratus and even altostratus, you have to take that in consideration. So once again, as we're seeing, we're coming into around about, I think about 2 o'clock now. I'm just looking at the position of the sun, because that's where I know basically what time it is. That haze is starting to come in now. And just looking, if you just look through this as we're going through, you can't really see any trails. You can see one there. You can see a few of them, but that bulk of that white haze, it's nothing to do with those trails. Remember I was saying that these white whispers here, these big whisper clouds, obviously this part of cirrus, and it's blending in with the trails because it's basically on the same altitude. And you can see it's starting to make the halo around the sun. Very typical example of cirrostratus. Again, it started to come in. I sound like a bloody weatherman, don't I? It's just basically I'm showing you what I've learned, and I've backed it up through books. So it's not a trust me bro situation. I'm saying, right, let's look at these books. Here's a typical example of cirrus. I've showed this so many times on my videos. Very typical example with the trails, with the cirrus, that big blanket, as you can see. Then it goes clear. And then, round about the evening, I started to notice the trails start to come to fruition. And you can see it here, starting to get quite prominent. Now, remember I said about there was this either two trails in the video that blended in together. Now, let's have a look. Look at the bottom right, where the chimney is, and you can see it's a bit hazy. Those two trails. Now, watch this. Two trails at the bottom, and it does get bigger. It does stretch out. Now, that bottom bit there, obviously talking about this bit here, that's what I was talking about, okay? Again, you can see the trails are getting quite... Now we'll have a look at this. This here, I just want to focus your attention on this, because I want to see how big these trails are getting. So it's this bit here I want to pay attention. You can see it is getting bigger and bigger. So I could say, yes, there are actually some trails actually playing a factor into this. And this is a very typical cirrus, big whispers. Or if we're saying that these are chemtrails, basically that's what it's mimicking. It's mimicking cirrus clouds, which what cirrus clouds do, basically spread out. And that's basically what's happening, because it's hitting the wind shear. So chemtrails basically mimicking this, cirrus clouds. It's just artificial. In a moment, you will see these trails, and that's what I was talking about in the video. When it came to the evening, that these trails started to come in quite rampant, and this is what you're seeing here. Now, let's just have a little look and see what they actually do. You can see they start to stretch out, and you've got a mixture of cirrus in there, like these big, bulky, fluffy clouds, you can say. And you can see it's all stretching out because it's hitting the wind shear. Big, fat trails. Again, you can see them right there. That's a tell sign. Okay, that's not a cirrus cloud. That's actually to do with the trails itself. Not a lot of trails, but there's a lot of cirrus. So you can see the trails that are actually spreading out and the ones that are actually cirrus clouds. And here is that white haze that gets quite dominant.
as the evening goes by. And I'm just going to let it run just to show you what can we make out of trails. Okay, we've got a bit here, we've got a bit here, but they're very, very faint. They're very faint. They're not really there to sort of blanket or even block out the sun. I think a lot of this is natural cloud of what we're seeing, and that the trails are actually above, because remember I was saying about the planes that were flying, and that the trails, some of them were dissipating. So there we go. That is the analysis once again on the 23rd of May 2025. And this was a couple of days after the big trails that we saw throughout the day. Again, that pretty much did nothing. And once again, these trails that we see in the sky didn't really do anything. And I hope this clarifies a few things. I am not a debunker. Chemtrails are real, but I think what people are seeing in the sky is most likely natural, and I'm going to back that up with books and sources so you can see for yourself. I don't want to rely on trust me bros, I'd rather have the research and the documents and even the paperwork just to show you, to say, look, what we're seeing in the sky most probably is natural. And do condensation trails or contrails persist and spread out? And the truth on that is yes, they do. Again, we can track them back. I'm going to pull up some photographs right here that I have already saved on StreamYard. And here we can see trails we can date back through many, many decades. So like I said, not every single trail we see in the sky is weather modification. And I'll leave you with that one. Right, I'll see you soon on another episode of Investigate with Nick or Cosmic Twilight. I'll see you soon.